Live from Quito, Ecuador, I'm Sonia Gray and this is From the South, the daily news brief from Tell Us Your English. And we start this new edition right now. The Colombian President, Juan Manuel Santos, has announced the suspension of peace talks with the ELN guerrillas that were taking place in Ecuador. The government has accused the ELN of an attack on the Caño Limón oil pipeline, the second largest in the country, saying it's the reason that they've pulled out. It also said that there were 2 other incidents, but didn't provide more information. Negotiators from both sides were already in Quito to begin the next phase of the talks on Tuesday, the same day the bilateral ceasefire between the 2 sides expired. The ELN released a statement regarding the new ceasefire negotiation. Among other things, the group said that this new round of talks should allow the people to participate in the peace process and that all parties should consider the renegotiation of a new bilateral ceasefire, one that overcomes the difficulties that arose during the previous ceasefire that expired midnight Tuesday. They also said the group will continue to fulfill the conditions of the new expired ceasefire.
We will wait for an answer from the government to see if they still want to look for a solution to what happened today. If we have a positive answer from the government, our negotiating team will remain here in Quito to start the 5th round of negotiations. But if we don't, we will have to return to Colombia. I sent the government team a message asking them how long should we wait. We don't have a problem waiting, but if they don't say anything, I will have to ask my delegation to return to Colombia.
Dígame cuánto tengo que esperar.
The humanitarian aspect didn't improve as much as we would want. Actually, the persecutions and killing of social leaders increased. The repression of social protests also got worse. The humanitarian relief that was the main objective of this ceasefire is missing. We are aspiring to improve the conditions for the communities with a new ceasefire.
President Santos explained his decision to call back his lead negotiator in the talks via social media. Santos tweeted, "We were always willing to extend the ceasefire with the ELN. They inexplicably refused and today they resumed terrorist attacks. I have instructed Gustavo Bell, head of the negotiating team from the government, to return immediately from Quito and evaluate the future of the process." In another message, he said, "This morning, I reiterated to our armed forces to act with force and to respond to this aggression by the ELN. My commitment to peace will be unwavering, but this comes with concrete actions, not just words." And now to Bogota, our Bogota correspondent Lorena Hoyos, who has the latest.
The peace dialogue between the ELN and Colombia's government has been jeopardized after a ceasefire expired at midnight yesterday. The ceasefire lasted for 3.5 months. The measure was supported because it protected communities affected by the armed conflict. It also breathed hope for talks that happened in Quito, Ecuador this week. However, negotiations did not result in an extension of the ceasefire. Just hours after the ceasefire ended, rebel attacks resumed. In the morning, the government announced an attack to the Caño Limón pipeline and an attack on Navy soldiers based in the Arauquita region. The government blamed the ELN for both attacks. Meanwhile, Pablo Beltrán, head of the negotiation team of the ELN, said it is very important that the peace dialogue continues, on with a bilateral ceasefire. He says the sides need to evaluate the ceasefire experience and the difficulties that have to be overcome. However, just before the new round of talks started in Quito, President Juan Manuel Santos said that he could not understand why the ELN didn't want to have a ceasefire extension. He also rejected the attacks that occurred today, and he has asked Gustavo Bell, head of the government's negotiation team, to return to Colombia to define the future of these peace talks with the ELN. Social movements have said that they will defend the peace dialogues with the protests and that both sides should not leave the negotiation table in order to benefit the people.
Venezuelan and Netherlands authorities are due to meet on Friday to seek a solution to the problem of smuggling to the island of Aruba, Curacao and Bonaire. On Tuesday, Venezuela extended its suspension of all ANC links with the ABC Islands imposed last Friday. Our special correspondent reports from Aruba.
Night is a smuggler's best ally. Landing at Aruba's main port, Barcadera, for over 2 years, illegal activities became legal. Just a week ago, in the same courtyard, customs agents allowed the passage of key resources for Venezuela's economy, such as gold and copper, which were then sold as a scrap for $5 a kilo and then resold in Europe for 70 euros a kilo. Daltra, an Aruban private business, lies behind this wall. Here, you can still see mountains of copper, iron and steel smuggled out of Venezuela.
I'm aware that accepting these resources is wrong. Buying what's stolen is wrong. Your people are suffering, and it's wrong that our country was allowing this to happen.
But at last, Aruba's government banned sales of uncertified steel originating from Venezuela. The governor of Falcon, a state that shares over 600 kilometers of coast with Aruba, Curacao and Bonaire, has said that Aruba's government, by acting upon these crimes, is fostering a healthy bilateral partnership for commerce.
Es la posición más sensata, necesaria. This
is the most reasonable and necessary response, coming also from these Caribbean islands, with which we've historically had good relations. It's not a new relationship. We were linked by history and by brotherhood. We've always expected to share the fight against these crimes, and they have recognized this.
Combatir juntos, un flagelo que lamentablemente nos ha afectado a nosotros aquí, pero también ellos la han reconocido.
Aruba is the Caribbean's main copper exporter, despite the fact the country has no copper mines. In 2016, it exported nearly $6 million worth of copper scrap, mainly to the Netherlands, and within 5 years increased its export business by 416%.
We have more news in a minute. Stay with us. Opposition supporters in Honduras are planning more protests against fraud in the coming days. This comes as human rights organizations report an increase in political killings by the army and the police.
The stories about demonstrators being killed are being repeated once again, especially in the north zone of Honduras.
When
they fired the grenades, he ran away from them because he was asthmatic. Then the police started shooting at him until one of the bullets got into the left side of his chest. They grabbed him and took him into the police car. They left him there for an hour and a half, people said.
To the selected murders adds also the criminalization of human rights defenders, which assure it comes from the government.
Out of nothing, we, the human rights defenders, have been accused of many criminal offenses, especially in my case. I have been accused of being part of organized crime and drug trafficking. They say I'm also responsible for burning down some stores.
The recent assassinations in the north zone of Honduras were performed by hitmen. The victims are people associated to the opposition, like the case of Santos Alvarado, who has been killed in the last hours in San Pedro Sula.
No es casualidad.
This is no coincidence, because these assassinations happen in the cities where there are more resistance and more demands being made through peaceful demonstrations. We're talking about San Pedro Sula, in all its municipalities.
For the defenders, the police and the army, their acts are arbitrary, planning for people to stop demonstrating, especially on the strike plan on January the 20th.
Mire, para empezar, ni siquiera deberían estar con pasamontañas.
For starters, they shouldn't wear ski masks. They should be identified with their badges, with their names on it. They shouldn't perform any searches without a warrant. We are facing completely arbitrary behavior by the military and police, who want to impose fear and terror.
Quiere imponer a toda costa es el miedo y el terror.
Some reporters say that some 31 people have been killed so far during the protests. More than 50 have been injured by military bullets, and more than 100 people have been incarcerated.
More state workers have been fired in Argentina, this time 28 people from the Ministry of the Environment. The public servants arrived at the ministry's building to protest these measures, although the Minister of the Environment, Sergio Bergman, sent police forces to disperse the demonstration. These layoffs add to the growing number of dismissals in the state sector by the government of Mauricio Macri.
With every worker that is being fired, there are functions that are left unfulfilled, programs that are left unfinished, and end up falling apart both here and in other ministries. This is becoming more aggressive and violent.
Bolivia's main trade union confederation, the COB, began a 24-hour general strike against the newly approved criminal code. The government says it is part of a political conspiracy. The union demanded the annulment of the code and refused to negotiate. This comes after the doctors ended their 47-day strike as the lower house made changes to Article number 137, the union's main concern. President Evo Morales said his administration would adopt measures to respond to what he says are political attacks.
After 8 signed documents and agreements, they are still not attending to the health of our people. Other interests guide medical unions along with opposition sectors to try to carry forward an anti-democratic political conspiracy. I have decided for the health and life of our people to take all constitutional and legal actions to restore medical attention and health services for our people.
The Inter-American Court of Human Rights has urged the government of Costa Rica to recognize same-sex marriage. It also asked Costa Rica to recognize the right of transsexuals to change their name and gender on their IDs and to ensure that they receive the same family and financial rights as heterosexual couples. The International Court made the decision after an official resolution was reached based on a referendum held in May 2016. Pope Francis gave a message to the people of Chile and Peru ahead of his visit to the two nations, which begins on January 15th. His trip will last 8 days, and he's expected to address the rights of indigenous people.
I know the history of your countries, shaped by perseverance and tenacity. I wish to thank God together with you for the faith and love you have for Him, and for your brothers and sisters in need, especially the love you demonstrate towards those who are discarded by society. The culture of waste dominates us more and more.
And 80% of Chileans do not agree with the state's use of tax money to finance the Pope's visit to the country, an opinion shared by several trade union leaders. More details in the next report.
Pope Francis' visit has cost in excess of $17 million, of which the Chilean state has to contribute almost $11 million. A situation that has not been well received by social leaders.
We have urgent problems in Chile that require a tremendous fiscal investment and resources. It's constantly alleged that there is no money. However, the Pope comes for a few days to make some activities, which are great for us, but it's a huge expense for public resources that are being used.
The Catholic Church will contribute donations worth $6 million for the cost of the 3 masses that Pope Francis will give around Chile. They will also finance the fuel for more than 3,000 kilometers that the Pope Mobile will travel and the manufacturing of 600,000 sacred wafers for Holy Communion. Among other things, the $11 million remaining come from the state fiscal budget that has millions worth of debts across different sectors of the population.
We cannot understand how the government in this particular visit distributed so much public resources when the rest of the people need a lot of assistance. It is not a rich country that is able to use so many resources.
The so-called historical debt with teacher unions is just one of them. In fact, in 2017, images of teachers demanding the payment of their salaries and social security were seen all around the world.
There are salary debts in different sectors. 7 billion debt in the teachers' union case. In other labor and social areas as well. These are urgent matters in which public resources could be applied.
Various social leaders are concerned. They don't question the Pope's visit, but they reject the decision of the executive power to assign public resources to his trip.
The Pope's visit to Chile generates sympathy in a great sector of the population. They have great expectations, but the government is playing with people's hopes.
However, 80% of the consultants in the CADEM survey said they didn't agree that the state should finance the Pope's visit, an opinion shared by even the country's Catholics.
Another issue facing the Pope is his appointment of a bishop in Osorno, Chile, who's been accused of protecting an alleged pedophile. Protesters in Chile say they will demonstrate every day of the pontiff's visit because he hasn't done enough to root out sexual abuse. Pope Francis has defended the bishop, saying allegations that he covered up sexual abuse are unfounded. And Puerto Rico's Director of Tourism, Jose Izquierdo, has been removed from office after being accused of sexual harassment. As announced in December 2017, Izquierdo allegedly harassed several female colleagues while in office. The Secretary of the Governorship, William Villafañe, asked for his removal, saying he can no longer be trusted. During the last months of 2017, Mexico imported record amounts of gasoline, primarily from the United States. Analysts have warned the government's dependence on foreign fuel will raise the ire of the public. Citizens are complaining that promises from 2013 energy reforms have not been developed, and they are bearing the brunt of it.
Protests over rising gas prices continue all over Mexico. In Mexico City, a group of citizens blocked access to a gas station downtown.
This is the first gas station converted to hydrocina. It's no longer Pemex. It got privatized. We're just a few streets away from the Senate, and this is the station that sells the most fuel in the country.
People are still waiting to see any benefit from the energy reforms approved by Congress in 2013, which allowed foreign and national private capital to manage fuel distribution. They feel President Enrique Peña Nieto has forgotten his own promises.
He promised gas prices wouldn't go up. He gave his word, and not long after, prices started to go up. Something like this hadn't happened in many years. When he took office, gas stood at about 12 pesos. Now the price is at 17 pesos and is expected to reach 20 by February.
Large foreign companies are the ones that have benefited the most from the energy reform. In December, ExxonMobil opened its first gas station in Mexico, where they only sell fuel produced in the United States. Dependence on foreign fuels worsened during the last few months of 2017, when 78.3% of Mexico's entire fuel supply was imported. Out of a total of 813,000 daily barrels required by the nation, only 185,000 barrels were produced by Pemex refineries, less than a quarter of what is needed.
What's happening is a significant reduction in national production. There's a serious problem with Mexican refineries. The government has neglected the maintenance budget for them, which has led the refineries reaching productive incapacity, which then forced them to have to import more fuel.
Public and freight transportation have also faced a rise in prices. 73% of our diesel supplies are imported, and national diesel production has fallen by 31%. Undoubtedly, imports are greatly affecting prices, specifically due to the volatility of international prices and the continuous fall of the Mexican peso in comparison to the dollar.
Del peso frente al dólar. Eduardo Martínez, Telesur, Ciudad de México.
And also in Mexico, things are getting more expensive. The higher cost of food and services sent inflation up by almost 7% in 2017. According to the National Statistics and Geography Institute, that is the highest level in 16 years. Reports say daily food items like tomatoes are now about 40% more expensive. Airfare in and out of Mexico have also jumped. Plus, There has been uncertainty surrounding the renegotiation of the NAFTA agreement by Mexico, Canada, and the U.S., and that has also depreciated the Mexican peso. We have more news after the break. Stay with us. Catalan's main pro-independence parties have agreed to re-elect Carles Puigdemont as the president of the region. The announcement comes after pro-independence parties won a narrow majority of seats in the Catalan parliament following fresh elections on December 21st. Puigdemont, however, remains in self-imposed exile in Brussels, so how he can legally perform as head of Catalonia is still up in the air. And our correspondent, Joan Ortiz, has more details in the next report.
Muy buenos días. Saludos a ti, saludos a toda la audiencia de Telesur. En efecto, hay este acuerdo.
An agreement in the parliament has been reached. What still needs to be known is how Carles Puigdemont will be sworn in as president, if the swearing-in ceremony will be done by video conference. Recently, the left Republican ERC party prepared their attorneys to read the parliament internal regulation to find out if Carles Puigdemont could be sworn in as president by long distance. However, Puigdemont proposed to do his presidential speech through a video call, and if this wasn't possible, his second option will be to have an elected deputy to represent him and perform his speech before the parliament. Some important information that still needs to be confirmed is who is going to be the chairman of the parliament table, since the parliament table is a mediation instrument during debates. It is important to have a separatist majority in order to move the independence process forward. Finally, what is still unclear is what is going to happen to the elected deputies who are detained in Brussels. All of them have presented credentials to occupy a parliamentary seat, but if they come back to Catalonia, they will be arrested. There was the possibility for them to hand over their seat to other members of the party. There's still more information to be discussed, but the biggest news today is that there's an agreement between both parties, and that Carles Puigdemont will be sworn in as president with an independence parliamentary majority.
¿Quién va a presidir la mesa del Parlamento? Eso es importante.
We thank Joan Ortiz for that report. A United States judge has ruled the White House must maintain the DACA program. This program bars the deportation of children brought to the U.S. by their parents without any valid documents. DACA is short for the Deferred Action of Childhood Arrivals. In September, President Trump revoked the DACA program, which was put in place during the Obama administration. But a San Francisco judge said it must stay in place while litigation against the move continues. The judge ordered the government to continue processing applications for people who had previously been covered.
I've been able to go ahead and find a good career path, a good job here in the United States, the only country I kind of know as home. And well, removing it from as the Trump administration is trying to do, probably, take that all away from me and force me to go back to a country I don't know.
Members of social groups in the United States who are protesting against Israel's oppression of Palestinians and are trying to pressure Israel to comply with international law through boycotts have been banned by Tel Aviv from entering Israel, the occupied zones of the West Bank or the Gaza Strip.
Ariel is a member of Code Pink, one of the 6 U.S. organizations banned from Israel who are part of the BDS movement, which means boycott, divestment, and sanction Israel for their violations of Palestinian rights.
I wasn't surprised at all. I spent all of last summer in Palestine. I stayed in Hebron City, a hotspot in the West Bank, and they started a whole campaign against me and Code Pink, saying that they would throw me out of the country because of my political ideas, for representing Code Pink and for supporting the Palestinian struggle.
Along with Code Pink, there are 22 other peace groups in the world already on Israel's blacklist for supporting the BDS campaign.
The Boycott, Disinvestment and Sanctions Group started in 2005 and was advised by civil society in Palestine to use the non-violent tactics which succeeded in ending apartheid in South Africa.
Non-violent que tuvieron éxito en poner fin al apartheid en Sudáfrica.
Israel's government approved on December 2017 a $75 million budget to fight against the boycott campaign. In order to fight against solidarity for Palestine, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu proposed the elimination of the UN's Agency for Palestinian Refugees, which sends humanitarian aid to the occupied territory in Gaza Strip. The only other country supporting Israel is the United States, where President Trump said he won't aid Palestine anymore, and according to reports, he might cancel the delivery of $125 million meant to be for the aforementioned UN's agency.
Our president basically said that he doesn't want to fund anything related to Palestine until they agree to negotiate again.
Hasta que ellos acuerden volver a la mesa de negociaciones.
After Washington announced they would be moving their embassy to Jerusalem, Palestinian authorities decided to not negotiate peace with any member of Donald Trump's government, standing in between Israel and Palestine. The U.S.'s choice was internationally rejected with overwhelming results in the UN's elections.
And now we go to Noor Harazin, our Palestinian correspondent, who has this report on the situation in Gaza.
In a row, Israeli forces violated the agreed Palestinian-Israeli ceasefire when attacking Palestinian fishermen off the coast of Gaza City, despite the fact that they are fishing inside the 6 nautical miles limit. The same thing happened in the eastern border between Gaza and Israel when Israeli forces attacked Palestinian farmers who were inside their farms. Beside all of that, the Palestinian people here in the Gaza Strip are living one of their worst months ever. Since 10 years, and the Gaza Strip has been suffering from the Israeli siege and also from the lack of electricity and fuel and medical supplies. However, this month is considered the worst of them all, as Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has imposed some sanctions over the people of Gaza to force Hamas into the reconciliation table. The Palestinian people are hoping that the president will lift these sanctions of the Gaza Strip soon, and the situation could go better in the next few weeks.
We thank Noor for that report. More than 200 people have been arrested and dozens hurt during clashes in Tunisia in protest against economic reforms. 49 police officers were wounded during clashes over a newly implemented budget, which has seen the government raise the prices of petrol and hike taxes on cars, phone calls, internet usage and hotels as part of the New Year's austerity measures to satisfy the country's loan with the IMF. And with that report, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Suni Gray. Thank you so much for watching.
Mi nombre es Mónica Malo, soy de Cuenca.